Hey guys, welcome back. All right, today's video we are going to talk about the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I have with me my lovely wife Natalie, who's joined me on some reviews before, and she has a different type of outlook on these kind of things. I feel like it's valuable to have her input here. And
thank you.
This is going to have some spoilers, so if you're concerned with spoilers, maybe skip out right now. But if you're just curious what we think, stick around. And we just happen to be wearing these shirts. And this is a little bit spoilery and unintentional, but I'll just preface this at the very beginning by saying a part of the movie takes place in Sicily. And Natalie was just in Sicily probably less than a month ago and came back with these shirts. And this is a pivotal character in Indiana Jones that they filmed stuff in Sicily, and while she was there,
I had no idea. I didn't.
No
I
idea.
had no idea.
Called me on FaceTime from some of the locations that were in the film, not knowing they were going to be in the film.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to, I didn't get to see him in person, but I got to see him live with her there and see it in the film. I was like, oh my gosh, there's the place. Anyway, let's get to the review. But I wanted to start out just so you know. So, anyway, I'm going to say a broad statement is that I liked it. I actually really liked it a lot. I didn't like it as much as the original films, but it's definitely better than Crystal Skull. Well, much, much better in my opinion. And I've listened to a lot of people online who like to hate on these movies. Oh, Disney's doing it. It's time to hate on it. I always go in as neutral as possible so I can kind of take what I see more objectively. But I feel like so many reviews that I've watched are tainted a little bit by that opinion before they got into it. And Natalie hasn't watched all this stuff that I watch. I watch a bunch of dorky YouTubers that are as dorky as I am. It's not a knock on these people, but they like to hate on Disney. They like to hate on anything that's not done. I just is like a negativity fest. I did not see the things that they're talking about. And I watch reviews from a lot of reviewers, and they are seeing things differently than I did, especially with Phoebe. What is her character's name in here? I can't remember any characters. This
Helena.
Helena. Yeah. He calls her, what's the nickname? Wombat.
Yeah.
So, I liked her. I liked her acting. I thought was very good. Her character seemed correct. It didn't seem overpowering, everybody's saying, oh, they're putting Indy on the back burner and all this. I did not feel that at all in this film. So that's just to get that out of the way up front. And we'll probably talk about that more as we go. But anyway, where should we start? At the beginning?
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. I mean, can I just say what's just another sort of overall thing to kind of keep in mind when you're watching this? And it's something that I think it's a mixture of in your face and sort of subtle, but time is kind of a character in this movie.
Yeah.
As much as anything else. It begins with Nazis and it ends with Marion. And it's sort of choked me up a little bit. I mean, I grew up watching these movies, so I loved Indiana Jones when I was a kid. I loved Marion when I was a kid. I also am a type of person, I go to see a movie and I don't have any expectations for characters, or I just want a good story. I think this delivered. But yeah, we begin with a Nazi sequence.
Yeah, on a train, and it's a de-aged Indy. Now, I'm gonna also upfront say that throughout this movie, one of the big things in any film is that if something pulls me out of the film, so I can start analyzing a thing, whether it be a scene or a bad visual effect or something, it's distracting. I had very, very, very few of those moments in the film. There were some at this beginning part with the de-aging, which was done. I did VFX work. I know all about 3D animation and modeling and lighting. I know this stuff very well. I know how difficult this is to do and do it well. I think that probably 87% of that de-aging looked really, really good. But one of the very first reveals looked good, but not quite perfect, and it's very hard to get it perfect. I understand this. So my brain And I think even when it's done really well, you can't help but be slightly distracted by the fact that you know they're de-aging somebody.
I was totally impressed.
Yeah,
like
it was
couldn't
good.
believe it. I mean, it was sort of weird to see.
Yeah, she
it was
goes,
amazing.
Because did they do something to his face? So I'm like, yeah, he's like 80 now.
I want that makeup.
So it's really good.
Yeah.
There's a few times when it looks slightly off, but for the most part, it's really, really good. It's just getting your brain past that, looking at it so objectively, and not even that and even when it's right, your brain is sort of distracted by it being good. But that aside, that entire sequence, the whole beginning of the movie, to me, felt like old school Indiana Jones. The adventure elements and just the right amount of like slapsticky stuff, like you said. It's like it's cheeky, but good action on the edge of stuff going wrong, but still good. Felt like old Indiana Jones. I really, really liked it. So if you can get past that little thing of the de-aging, which is really good. Like I said, 87%, I would give like a full good to go. A couple shots are like, could have been a little better. I don't know if they piece this out to different companies or something, but
I'm not sure.
But anyway,
it was such a good setup at the beginning. At first I thought, oh no, it's like an old party trick like the Nazis, and I was a little worried. I didn't know anything about this movie going in. I didn't even know that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was in the movie, and I love her. I actually really like Fleabag. But yeah, I kind of was like, okay, well, I love the sequence. I thought it was a fantastic sequence. And then when you see how it plays out to set up the rest of the movie and these characters and their stories, I thought it was just so fantastic. It was such a great opening, and I think it gave everyone that sort of like taste of old Indiana Jones,
exactly.
but then also brings us into sort of like this new era.
And you see the contrast because he's old now.
He is.
And Harrison Ford's 80.
He's
right?
80. So we were just talking. I was like, what are the choices that today's filmmaker has? You either have a movie with the entire movie is a de-aged Harrison Ford, which I don't think anyone wants to see.
Yeah, because the Irishman, they de-aged. Was it what's his name?
De Niro.
Yeah. And it's like he looks younger, but he still moves around like an old guy. It's very awkward.
If you get another actor, it's just not. Do you really want to see that? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to see that. But anyway, so that's one choice. You get another person to play Indiana Jones. I don't know. Or you get Harrison Ford. And let me just say, Harrison Ford has charm.
He did a good job.
He's just amazing. That's why, he's one of the elite actors, and it's something that you can't teach people. He just has it. And he has it in this movie.
Yeah.
As an 80-year-old.
He can turn on the Indiana Jones thing so well.
He's fantastic.
And even as they cut from the scene that's back in the 40s probably, or late 30s, early 40s, whenever this train scene is. Mm-hmm. And it cuts to him as an old guy and a professor with a lot of disinterested. Actually, it comes back to him. He wakes up in this scene because he's waking up in 1969.
He wakes
to the moon.
To Magical Mystery Tour, and it really reminded me of Mad Men. There was something about it. I don't know if you've ever seen Mad Men, but it was kind of like Don Draper when he hits the 60s. He's disoriented. Also, I thought that was like kind of the perfect song. After you see the movie and I kind of think back on it, I'm like, that is sort of the perfect song, because he does go through this wild ride of facing his past and, and dealing with time and going back into time. And there's this whole time thing going on. And it did feel sort of like a Magical Mystery Tour in a way. There was...
And I think that it's good that they show the contrast of, you see him in action when he's younger, and when they see him then old, you feel it. Mm-hmm. Like, you could feel his age. And he's in good shape for an old guy, but he's an old guy. And he's got to go deal with these young kids that are not interested in what's going on in that class at all. And then that's when they reveal Phoebe's character.
Right.
And he's asking questions of class and nobody's answering, and she knows the answers. Now, this is one of those things that people critique. Oh, she's like, Mary Sue knows everything. Oh. But this is his goddaughter
Mhm.
that grew up with one of his, co-workers as friends, who is
Mhm.
also a very smart archaeologist, surrounded by this stuff her whole life. So her being smart and knowing answers to things didn't feel out of place to me. It didn't feel like she just showed up and she's smart. She clearly grew up around this stuff.
And yeah, and it's not, I mean, she knows some facts. It's not
Yeah.
like she's, I don't know, like solving the ancient mysteries in class. She's answering a couple of questions. And also, we find out later that she was obsessed with her father's work and memorized his notebook. So it makes sense that she would, and she's also obsessed with this artifact. And for various reasons, which are quickly brought to our attention. I really loved that they got to the point. I love that it didn't drag on.
The pacing was very good.
It felt like the moment we realize what Helena, that is Indiana Jones's goddaughter, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. As soon as we realize her intentions and that she is not this. At first, she presents herself as this sort of studious, student that is also interested in preserving artifacts, and they have this sort of connection. We immediately realize that is not why she wants this, that she's been lying to him, and then it's sort of a roller coaster ride from that moment on. It's just the action sort of doesn't stop.
And there is Mad Mikkelsen's character is now, he lost this half of this dial. What is the name of it? It's called she wrote this down.
The Antikythera.
Antikythera.
Yeah.
So it's this 2-part device that finds portals in time so you can travel back in time. And there's half of it. So Archimedes, he basically built this, and it realized that it was maybe dangerous, so broke in two pieces, took it apart, and hid the pieces. So they have half of it. Mads Mikkelsen had this on the Nazi train at the beginning, and Indy ends up with it. And Mads is still after it. Now he has worked on the moon program for the U.S. because he's one of those Nazi rocket scientists that basically is now, working for the U.S. space program, which is a real thing that happened. So, guys on the moon, the whole thing starts out with the astronauts that went up to the moon are now on a parade in New York City, and all this parade stuff is going on. So Mads has these henchmen who are after them, which ups the tension. So when Phoebe and Indy, what's Phoebe? I can never. Helena. I think of Wombat, because that's what Indy calls her the whole time.
Wombat's good too. You
So
can call her Wombat.
They go to this museum, like archive back room, and they're fish out this thing which Indy has hidden under a drawer. And at the same time, these henchmen are after them. And one of the things about this movie that I think really, really helps it compared to a lot of other kind of like Disney-esque films is that you feel the stakes, because they are not scared to kill people in this movie. So when the henchmen come in, they just are murdering people to get to this thing. Like, just
innocent people.
I mean, like, oh my god, like when I saw them, like, oh, they're going there with it. And then they establish some characters that they ended up killing. I won't even give too much of that away, but it's it's
sort of like, they're key characters and people that you sort of have some sympathy for.
You start to connect with them, and then they get killed.
Right.
So I like that in the sense that you are now like, wow, they're not scared to hold back on just murdering this person who you feel like might be a key player in the film is just snuffed out.
Yeah.
And now it ups the stakes, and it makes you legitimately feel differently than you would if everybody was safe the whole time. Because whenever everybody's safe, somebody's not going to get hurt or killed. You don't feel anything through the whole film. And this, you feel like these people mean business, and they're murdering like innocent librarians and just random teachers and whoever they come across. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah, there are a lot of push and pulls, and Indy has to contend with Wombat trying to steal this artifact and sell it basically, and then the Nazi trying to get the artifact. So there's sort of this like multi-layered chase going on to, you know, to save this thing and to save the world.
Yeah. At this point, Helena has stolen this, and now the Nazis and India are after her, but the Nazis are, you know, chasing everybody down. And so they end up out in this big parade that's going on in the city, which basically leads to the horse chase that I think you see in some of the trailers, which I thought was pretty fun. It's obviously a little far-fetched, but so is the minecart chase, and so is jumping out of a plane with an inflatable raft, and lots of other stuff in indie movies that's equally as like far-fetched. So he ends up escaping, you know, getting on a train, and then basically they have to go. He finds Sala, who knows where Helena's going to take this artifact to sell. Right.
Yep. So they end up in Tangier.
Yeah.
And then there is, so we really see kind of like what a badass she is. And I feel like, you know, for me watching this, I was so excited to see that she wasn't sort of like this scholarly person and Indy and her were together running from the Nazis. Or I love that he had to deal with her, who was sort of like a wild card. You didn't know what she was going to do.
Yeah.
She was, you know, fearless, and she felt like a worthy match to Indy. You know, she was just as adventurous, and she wanted this thing, and nothing was going to.
She's kind of cutthroat.
Yeah.
It's that she's not scared to take risks.
Right.
And when you say badass, she's like, I feel like it was more. I think if she was just like a super badass, I would be bothered by that. But she felt like she knew what she was doing. She had her connections. She's there to make money.
Yeah.
And so and she's not scared. But
she's not scared. I think what I mean by badass is that she's not intimidated by much. And I feel like that's an exciting thing to see in any adventure movie. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, when Indy, you know, doesn't back down to these Nazis, anybody else would, you know, just try to save their own lives, and I mean, still obviously, you know, try to get what they want, but they're not going to actively piss off a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah.
He doesn't care, and it's fun to see that because we all wish we could be that person, and I think she's sort of like the anti-hero equivalent to that. Yeah. You know,
she still makes an escape from these guys. It's not like she fights him and she's like when I think badass, I think she's gonna fight him off. She's like tough. She runs from them and she gets away.
Right.
Which is, you know, she's using her brain, and it's like, and it's good because if she fought him off and did something, I would be distracted and bothered. Her escape, I felt was very fitting. She got away. It was I liked the whole scenario.
Yeah.
Like I thought it went really well. Then they end up in Tangier, and they're this kind of an auction where they're, you know, auctioning off these relics, and she's brought this thing and she's just going to sell it. She doesn't care about, you know, the inherent value of it as an artifact, or it goes to a museum, or like Mads Mikkelsen knows it's got some mystical powers that he can utilize to like reset World War II and have the Germans win. It's, you know, she just wants money. Mm-hmm. And so they get there, everybody shows up, it's like a big, you know, more excitement. Yeah,
they go, there's this long tuk-tuk race where there are these like three-wheeler, you know, kind of cars.
They're like little taxi, like three-wheeler, little cross between a scooter and a little car, little taxi things.
Yeah, and that was super fun. I thought it was a little long.
Yeah, it was, could have gone 30% shorter in that regard, but it was well done. There were some crazy crashes. Everybody kind of, you meet some new characters. The little kid, what's the kid's name?
Teddy?
Teddy?
Yeah, Teddy. Yeah.
So you meet Helena's little friend, who is just like this boy. He's kind of like you said, like the short round equivalent.
Yeah.
And he's along for the adventure. He's a little pickpocket, you know, a little wily little kid. Mm-hmm. And he's got a little bit of a mustache, which is...
He's like her little sidekick, and it's sort of your entrance into her, you know, she's so cutthroat that her relationship with him is sort of the you get a glimpse of her humanity. She's sort of loyal to him, and she's really sweet with him, and I felt like that was like a good pairing, those two together.
Yeah. No, it was that I thought that worked well. There's a whole chase again. Everybody's trying to get this thing back, and then the chase. It's too long to describe it completely. It's kind of crazy, but they at this point, Mads has the dial. He has now reclaimed the dial at the auction. There's a big fight. He gets it, and now he's getting away.
Right.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. And then, gosh, I don't remember what happens next.
So they go.
They end up.
So the chase happens. They get down to. They end up back with his car, that Mercedes. Right. And do they get it right then? I can't remember if she gets it back at that moment. I think.
I don't know if that's that important. Basically, it sort of trades hands, and yeah.
Yeah. So then next they go.
Yeah.
It
feels like a Rube Goldberg mechanism.
It goes like, back and forth a few times.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember exactly when it changed hands again, because they end up on this boat. They have to go find the next part.
Right.
It's this whole thing. They decipher, where they kind of need her to help, so they can't just kill her yet. And same with Indy. Like, these two people know a lot about this topic, so they can't just kill them.
They know this language that kind of that has the directions to where the other half
it's not even language, it's a code.
It's a code, right? That's right. Yeah. They make a point of saying that. So they know this code, and so Mads sort of needs them to decode this, but it leads them to Syracuse, which is in Sicily. And this is where they meet Antonio Banderas' character, who's this diver, and he's Indy's old friend. And they're going to go down to this, I guess it's like a shipwreck.
It's an old shipwreck.
Yeah.
And basically, there's another artifact there. There's this, like, block, has more code on it. Mm-hmm. And they go down there to get the part. And while they're down scuba diving, Mads' crew shows up and basically, kills some people on the boat. They get up there and they get back up to the surface, and basically Mads is trying to force Indy to decipher this thing, and he doesn't want to do it, and he just murders Antonio Banderas right there. Yeah. Just shoots him in the knee, actually, at first.
At first he shoots him in the knee and then ends up killing him.
And then ends up killing him. And then Helena reads the code, gives him the next steps or whatever. And
they end up getting away. They end up, like, escaping, and she's, it was sort of this harrowing thing where she gets some dynamite, and at first you think that she's going to make a deal with Mads, and Indy is sort of like, distraught about that, and he quickly realizes she's going to sabotage him and they're going to get away, and they do. It works out, and she's so excited. And I feel like this is sort of where the movie, Indy reminds her that his friend just died, and this
when they escape, she's like celebrating, like, woo, we got away. And then he's like, brings her back down to earth. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of those moments where she's just not like the person in charge. Like, people kind of saying, and he's like, dude, my friend just got killed. You know what I mean? Like, calm down a little bit. But that's when they get the directions to Sicily.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Because there's another clue where they have, it's in her grandfather's, kind of like the Grail Diary from the other one, where he has these coordinates that lead to a shipwreck, and it turns out there's another piece of kind of like a map to where they need to go to get the other half of the dial is in this block of wax. So it's this, looks like a wax block that they can read, but they melt it down. There's this big thing in there that kind of gives them direction on how to get to the other half of the dial. Right,
and they figure out that it's Archimedes lived in two places, in Greece and in Italy, in Sicily, and they realize that it is in Sicily in a place called Syracuse, which is actually true.
Sure.
This is that's Archimedes.
Archimedes.
This is Medusa, and I
But
got
this
these.
It says Syracuse on the bottom.
Oh yeah, it says Syracuse.
Yeah, so she got these. It's crazy because I go to the place and I'm like, that's the place you just called me. Literally, like live streamed me on from that place like 3 weeks ago or something.
It's an amazing place, full of history. It's
perfect setting.
So perfect for this, but so they end up going there and. They end up going there and they realize that it's in this cave.
Yeah.
The cave of Dionysus, which actually exists. And
I
got to go to that
cave.
She
called me from the cave. That's crazy.
It's not as elaborate as in the movie.
Yeah, in the movie, obviously, they make it, they turn the interior into a set and then they have some like crazy stuff going on. Honestly, I'm going to go back to that part when they kill Antonio Banderas. Mm-hmm. That scene felt like a scene from a James Bond film to me. It felt... Yeah. In the sense that almost every James Bond film, he'll go meet with some old friend, and then he ends up getting his friend killed. Yeah. Because of his actions, his friends end up dying. And this, in a lot of James Bond movies, that happens, and that's what this felt like. I got goosebumps. I mean, look, goosebumps. I can't fake that. Like, oh, you're just whatever, shilling for this film. That part was really good. It was good in the sense like I don't want somebody to die, but it's like clearly they're old friends, and he just got murdered. Helping Indy, which makes you feel.
It really had a lot of James Bond elements to me. Like it had this. It's sort of a strange mixture of things. It's like Indiana Jones, but it did have this James Bond feel with these sort of exotic locations and people. Yeah. And
it was cool. But they go to Sicily. They go through the cave. Mm-hmm. There's this whole thing. There's the Nazi people find them, and it was a little like maybe but he had an idea. Mads saw that they were going a different direction because where they were at, Greece was one way, Sicily was the other way, and he realized that they were not going toward Greece. And when they gave the clues. There was 2 places where they could go, and he realized that their little boat, when Indy and Helena escaped, they go toward the other direction. So he knows they're going that way. How he finds them, movie magic. Yeah. It's like, but it's passable. There's one part that's coming up that we'll get to that I was like, what? Yeah. One thing in the whole movie where I was really like, this is a little much. But anyway, they get to the cave. Bad guys show up. Chase ensues. It's pretty good. The whole action thing's pretty good. The little wily kids there, helps them escape the thing.
That was sort of like that little sequence where they get to Sicily. These kind of, I don't know, like tourists, these sort of preppy little boy tourists make fun of Teddy. And later, Teddy pickpockets them, gets the money, and buys a gelato, which you gotta do while you're in Sicily. And because of that, he's walking around eating his ice cream, and
he comes across the bad guys,
and they kidnap him.
Yeah. So they have him for a little bit. Mm-hmm. He ends up escaping. Ends up being the one to save Indy and Helena, who kind of get themselves stuck in a situation. Yeah. They find Archimedes' tomb. And they find the other half of the dial, which is great. But right after they get it, Mads shows up. He's there, and he basically takes it back. Now he's got the pieces. And they escape with the help of the kid. Right. Mads gets out, and they chase him back down. And this is the one part of the movie that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. They go to this big airplane hangar, and they pull out this old World War II plane, this big German bomber-looking plane, and big giant gunship. They come out, and all the Mads guys don these Nazi costume, like uniforms. Yeah. And they are gonna go back in time
and kill Hitler,
or like fix stuff. Like,
they are gonna kill Hitler.
I guess so, but they don't necessarily say. They're gonna go fix his errors. Is how he puts it. Okay. And so when they show up, I guess they need to be in uniform so that they fit in or something. So they take this old World War II plane, which is fine. But it just happens to be in Sicily for some reason.
Yeah.
That's the part that bothered me. If they had made a scene where they just traveled to another place to get that plane, I would be totally okay. It's just the plane is too convenient. They didn't know they're going to Sicily until like 15 minutes before, and now they're at an airport in Sicily where all of this stuff that they clearly have been hanging on to since World War II, it just happens to be, didn't make any sense to me. That part, that was like the biggest distraction in the whole film for me, was that moment. I was like, what? And I mean, everything else that like transpires from there is fine. It's just that moment. It's kind of like in Transformers when they are at the Air and Space Museum and in DC, when they go out back, it's like the middle of the desert, this big airplane junk like graveyard. I'm like, what is this? This isn't what it looks like. I had that same feeling. That was the biggest thing in the whole film for me that I found bothersome.
Yeah.
Once it was passed, I was like, yeah, okay, everything's fine. It's a movie. They get this little time machine, and it doesn't get you back in time. It shows you where portals will open and when to be at them and where to be to go into time, to go to certain areas, you know. So they take this thing, get on a plane, they fly out. While they're there, Indy gets brought onto the plane. They have Indy. He's been shot at this point.
Yeah.
He gets shot, and he's injured. They have him captive, and Helena is chasing after them. You still don't fully know what she's after. She clearly cares about Indy, but she might just be there to get this thing to sell it.
She kind of like, there's peppered throughout, and it's, I think they could have leaned a little harder into her character. There's certain things that happen where I'm like, they maybe should have developed this a little more. Indy and Helena have discussions about her father, his friend, and he's kind of like, why are you doing this? You know, your dad was this great man. He loved this thing. Also, why do you want this Antikythera? Your dad, he was obsessed with it. It drove him mad. And she makes a comment, that he wasn't, when her father died, Indy wasn't there either. So maybe you think, well, maybe she's bitter. Yeah. Like it put her on a different path because she did like memorize all of her father's notebooks, or like the important part, she says. So she's smart, she cares, and she has early memories of Indy and like her dad hanging out, and also a pivotal moment where Indy basically takes the Antikythera from her father.
Yeah, her father was going to destroy this thing, and he promised to destroy it, but
Indy promised the father that he would destroy it. He said, you have to destroy it. It could have terrible repercussions for the world. Yeah. And Indy said, I will, but he doesn't. So. And
that was the last time they saw each other.
Right.
Because that was the last time he saw Helena. She was like 12 at the time.
Yeah, and so she makes that one comment, which I like when, characters don't belabor points. And so it's there. So, like, okay, maybe she's a little salty about this, but it doesn't quite explain her path because she takes such a different path from like intellectual fighting the bad guys to, kind of like, she's sort of in bed with the bad guys. Yeah. Like her boyfriend was a sort of a thug, and, so it's sort of like, well, maybe she just, she had rotten luck, and now she's doing this. So yeah, toward the end when I feel like she and Indy sort of like their relationship, they get
closer and closer.
They get closer and closer.
Through the movie,
right.
You could see them like getting closer and closer through the film. And
instead of adversaries, like her stealing this from him, now they're kind of bonded because they're running from this guy. Yeah. And I feel like
at first they kind of need each other.
Yeah.
And then they start to kind of like, I feel like Indy always cares for her.
Yes.
But she is kind of getting closer to him. Like she has this bitterness that is, makes her kind of antagonistic, I guess, throughout the...
Yeah, and he really, to me, his character in this movie is sort of like a father figure to her. Yeah. He's very patient with her. She's sort of like this rebellious person, and the pivotal scene where you realize that now she's on Team Indy is that boat scene when you think she's making a deal with Mads, which she could have done maybe and gotten a lot of money, but she doesn't. She betrays Mads, and she and Indy go off. And I feel like that's the moment where she's sort of
even then I didn't trust her fully. But they chase down Indy and they get the kid to fly this plane who has never really flown a plane, that was another
at the beginning you see him learning.
He's pretty wily, so I could picture like if a kid was gonna do it, I could like in an old school kind of thing. It wasn't some like
they set it up at the beginning. He's
he's
learning. He's sort of learning how to fly. There's just a brief moment. Yeah. There's some pilots, and he's got like a little makeshift setup, and they're kind of teaching him how he would fly a plane. So you get the sense that he's interested in flying.
Yeah, it's like the first time I drove a stick shift. Right. I had my dad told me how to do it. I never stalled out. I got in it, and from following my dad's directions, he just told me how to do. I was able to do it. So when I see this, I'm like, it's passable. So I heard people complain about this. So I was like, I feel like this kid could do that.
Yeah.
And it's not some big crazy plane. It's like a little Cessna looking thing. And so he starts to follow them. Helena basically chases down this big plane on a motorcycle and just gets onto one of the landing gears right before it takes off. So she's on the plane with Indy, and this kid is following for convenience sake. It was like, I had mixed feelings on that. I didn't dislike it, but I was like, she could have ridden in the plane with him.
Right.
But then it would have like sacrificed a little of the action that happens here. So she ends up on the plane. Indy makes a point when they're about to travel through this portal that, hey, like Archimedes, they didn't know about tectonic shift and all this, so this isn't going to take you to the place you think you're going to go through. So they think they're going back to World War II era Germany or something, and they fly through, and guess what? It's a big war going on. They see down there, oh, we made it, we're here, and then they get closer, and you realize these boats are like 2,000-year-old boats.
Yeah.
That are
200 BC.
Yeah, 200 BC, like really old, like warships, and it's this Greece. It's like what is it?
I don't know which war it is, like Greco-Roman.
Yeah,
there's this ancient war.
Ancient war happening. It's not in World War II.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, this is the wrong place. And one of the things that was a hint to that I mentioned is when they show Archimedes' tomb, there's this like an eagle, but it has propellers on its wings, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that gave me chills.
Yeah, me too. And Archimedes had to watch. It was cool because at the scene you're like, oh, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's used it. He time traveled. So you think like, but I think I said it when it happened.
You did. Yeah, you did.
I called it when I saw it. I was like, because they like, oh, he time traveled. He used this thing and he did it. But the plane flies in. Basically, the plane gets damaged by these ships are firing these freaking, all these like harpoons basically at the plane. Which I was like, fly higher, maybe, like maybe fly a little higher.
Yeah.
I could understand flying in low at first. Maybe you take 1 or 2 hits just to check it out. You don't realize they can hit you, but then at that point you just get away.
Yeah.
But they kept flying low and stuff was happening. I was like,
yeah, it's like a gunfight. Like they're like shooting at these guys.
These guys are just like angrily shooting down, which okay, like some psychos might do that, but also like fly the plane higher.
Right.
That was dumb. Wasn't the worst thing. Sort of not. It didn't make a lot of sense in that regard.
Right.
But okay, I'm fine. And then the plane gets damaged basically beyond repair. It's going to crash, and in that time, Helena's now she's on the plane, and she basically opens one of the bomb doors and drops some of the Nazi soldiers out that were staying in the wrong spot. They fall out of the bomb hatch, but she ends up kind of falling out.
Yeah.
And hanging on, and there's like a guy hanging off her feet, so she barely makes it, and Indy has to save her. So Indy gets a parachute, as Mads wants a parachute, it's the only parachute apparently, and so Helena shoots Mads, but then Indy rescues Helena, who's about to fall to her death.
Yeah.
And they land, and there's Archimedes sees all this going on, and he comes out to see what's happening during the war, and they meet. So Indy gets to meet him. Indy's, shot. He's not doing really great. And this was one of those things. Was also like I had mixed feelings. I think the right thing happened, but I also felt like it could have gone the other way.
Well, I will say before that sort of choice happens, seeing Indy watching or being in this time, it was so good.
I got choked up. I'm choking up a little bit right now thinking about it. It was so good.
Somebody, that loves something so much, and then they get to see it with their own eyes, and you get that feeling through Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
you
he's
feel
so
like
good.
that. It's like, a kid going to Disney for the first time. Like, there's that sense of awe and wonder and excitement, and he really takes in that moment. I felt it, and of course, Helena is thinking about, just saving him. He's got what looks like a fatal gunshot wound.
Yeah.
He's bleeding from his shoulder. And
he's telling Archimedes he just wants to he wants to stay.
Yeah.
Stay there at that time. And she's trying to rescue him. Now this, the kids brought the other plane, so they have a way to get to the portal. You can see it in the background still in the sky.
It's got kind of a Back to the Future vibe
too.
Where it's like Doc Brown is like, what are do I stay here? But she is, so did we mention how that the Antikythera only takes you back to
well that'll come up. So basically they figure out that device, the Antikythera, only takes people back to the time when it was made. So it doesn't take you all over the place in different time periods. It only takes you back to that moment. So when they discover, they come across one of Archimedes' assistant comes across, and he sees that it's the full thing. And then they show that Archimedes is working on this in his shop. And when they show him, he's actually working on it. So here it is. And they're like, oh my gosh, it worked, And man, getting choked up. It was kind of good.
I know,
So anyway, so the thing works, but it turns out no matter where you're at in time, it only brings you back to that moment to help save, because this war is going on.
Right.
So I guess it's supposed to help. And they mentioned some of the other stuff that Archimedes designed, like these crazy mirrors that could set ships on fire and stuff. There's illustrations of them, but there's no proof. But you see them being used.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Which is
that.
funny because I just thought of this when you said it, but the fact that the Antikythera only goes back to that time to help them in a war is ironic, because Mads Mikkelsen's character wants to use it to help
someone else in a war.
Yeah, to help the Germans win. So, his storyline, everyone's sort of got their purpose in this movie and their motivations, and his is the war. He makes a point of telling this
random waiter
he's like this bellhop or something in a hotel who served in the U.S. military.
Said, well, you didn't win World War II, Hitler lost.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like he basically is.
It's something he can't shake. It's something that he's obsessed with, and he wants to fix it. And so I think that's a driving motivation for him, which I think is great. It's interesting, and it's and also everyone hates Nazis, so
and it's I mean, basically, so at the end, Indy wants to stay back in his time period. Helena doesn't let that happen. She basically knocks him out, and then he wakes up back in current day 1969.
Right.
And a thing we didn't talk about is that
I know what you're gonna say.
Is that his son, who was played by Shia LaBeouf in the last film, dies.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see him. He enlisted and he got killed, and that drove Indy and Marion apart. So at the end, he wakes up in his apartment and he's back in normal time. He's kind of upset, understandably, that he didn't get to stay there.
Right. He doesn't have anything to live for. He says that, Marion left him.
Yeah.
He
doesn't have a son.
He doesn't have, his son died. And, he's sort of like, he's
like, what reason do I have to be here?
He even, at the beginning, he gets this clock from, he's a professor at Hunter College. They give him a clock for his years of service.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe he's going to retire.
Yeah,
or something.
He's getting ready to retire.
Yeah. So he gets this clock, so, he's at the end of his career, and I love this sort of touch. he gets the clock and he's leaving and he hands the clock.
He just gives it away to some
gives
random
it to
person.
some like homeless guy, and I feel like that's like that time, you know, theme comes back in with that like moment of just sort of like, you know, giving away this clock, and ironically they're looking for a clock for the rest of the movie after that. There's a search for it.
But that's another thing is Archimedes, the watch he has was one of the, like, Indy's watch.
Yeah.
That was on his arm. Was it Indy's? Oh, I think it was Indy's, right?
I think it was Indy's.
Yeah. So when they find him, he's got this watch, thinking that, and it turns out it's like it was Indy's or it was the other guys. I can't remember. They got it. It was like a.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
I don't know for sure, but
I have to watch it. A lot of stuff happens. I'm trying to remember everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, he goes back in time. He tells Selena, like, well, you know, I don't have anybody. Like, who would I have to be here for? And she doesn't have to say anything. She just gives that look, and you're like, you're like, okay, like, you know, she cares. This is now her new father figure. Her father's dead. This is her godfather. They haven't seen each other since she was 12. Now they had this thing. It didn't feel like she's. Like, I hear this isn't talking about back at the beginning where I was talking about people online complaining like she's going to take his place. It doesn't feel like that at all to me. And I didn't get that feeling at all. Not even a little bit. And not even a tiny bit. So I've watched 10 reviews now of other people saying that. And I'm like, I did not feel this at all.
Do you mean that she's going to take
like she's going to be
place?
like the new Indiana Jones?
Like they're setting her up to be the new
action hero, maybe. But it doesn't feel like he didn't feel like he got pushed aside. He's like 80, and he's like an old guy. He got to do this thing. It just felt like a good, like, adventure. I don't know, I enjoyed it. But anyway, they do that, and then who walks in the door? Marion is back, and now I guess
we should mention this though. She says to him when she's asking him to go back, you know, to present day. You know, she says, "You don't belong here. This isn't your time. Also, you can't be here because it can change the course of history."
She doesn't say that to him, but she says it when he gets back.
When he gets back, and she doesn't say that then.
I think she says it when he's back. She's like, "Why did you take me?" Because it would have screwed up history.
I think she said it then too.
Maybe
both times, maybe not, but he, you know, Indiana Jones is all about preserving history, you know, and so. Him staying there, I feel like she was helping him do something that he would have normally done if he wasn't sad and depressed. Yeah. I mean, when we meet him at the beginning, he's kind of like
he's
sad, depressed.
Like when we meet him after the intro, however long, 15 minutes or whatever, when they're on the train chasing, he's younger, the de-aged. When you come up to him again, you don't realize his son's died. You don't realize his wife's left him. It's just like he's just like an old grumpy guy
in an old New York apartment that's like kind of run down, and you get the sense that, you know, adventure is behind him. And again, you know, I don't know a lot of the criticism of this movie, but for me, there's, you know, again, you have three choices. You can keep him de-aged forever, you can get a new guy to play Indiana Jones, or you deal with Harrison Ford as an 80-year-old actor. Yeah. And
I felt like they did a good job.
I thought they did a great
there are
job.
Complaints, we talked about this before, where people were complaining that, oh, he did this action thing on the horse, but then he's like, oh, I'm like, dude, have you done anything physical? Like, the stuff that he's doing in his most weakened state is probably more physical than half the people that watch this film. And he's climbing and he's a little tired, and people are like, oh, he's so weak. I mean, I'm like, yeah, he did a horse chase earlier, so an old guy doing a chase on a horse is probably going to beat the crap out of him. And we talked about this. I am a runner. Last year, it's actually starting again in a few days, there is the Badwater 135. I did not run it, but I was on the crew, and I saw guys in their 70s do this 135-mile race across the desert that don't look as fit as Harrison Ford. Yeah. So to say, you know, like, they didn't do it as fast as the young people. Yeah. They still made it, but not as fast. So if you're shuffling a little bit, but you're still doing, I don't know. It was a dumb criticism in my opinion. I was like, I don't see that. Again, back to the things that make a movie bad for me is when I'm pulled out of the moment, and it was almost none in this in the scope of the whole film. Maybe 3 times. 2 were really, really brief, and 1 was like the plane one that I mentioned earlier. Was the one thing where I was like, meh. But
I felt like I felt like
we didn't
Phoebe's...
finish like
Oh, yeah,
because we got
okay, well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah. So Marion
Yeah.
comes back to the apartment. They have the little moment. They go back to the thing from Raiders where when Indy is all beat to hell and shot and all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
and then she goes, "Where don't you hurt?" And he goes, "Here." You know,
Yeah.
she does that to him. It was sweet. You know, could she have had a bigger role in it? Probably. But the thing is, taking her out of it gives that, like, it changes the dynamic. It makes Indy, his whole spirit is different because she's not around. I think if she was around, he might not do the adventure.
And also, the younger people in the movie, Helena and Teddy, are the youthful engine in it. It's kind of what keeps him going.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you get the sense, you know, any 80-year-old, however active they are, there's a certain momentum that's lost as you get older. So it makes sense that Indy is not going to be doing all of these adventures as an 80-year-old man. And who really wants to see Indiana Jones and Marion running around? It would feel forced.
Yeah.
It would feel odd. It makes sense that he's a professor at a college and he's sort of, but life has happened to him, and you know, that's sort of the grounding elements of this. And he's taken out of his world and sort of
put back into what he's
adventure world
by
this connection from the past.
Yeah.
And it's a great, I feel like it's a great sort of umbilical cord to the past through this young girl and now her friend Teddy, her little sidekick, to bring him into this world. And then he gets dropped back off into his world after sort of, I don't know, this, again, magical mystery tour, this fantasy thing that happened. And we see Marion. I will say, I love Marion as a character a whole lot. I really loved her as a kid. I wish she would have been a little more exciting. So maybe this is my, like, fan girl coming out. But they made her like a hippie mom, which is fine. But, and I don't know. I really wish they would have made her like a little more like saucy, and she's so, I hate to say this, and I know she did lose her son in Vietnam, so of course that's going to be part of it, but she's so mopey and like down, like one note, and I don't know. It was sort of sad to me.
Yeah, you wanted to have a little more spunk, but also they did lose her son. She hasn't seen Indy. They like split up. Now
and she kind of gaslights him. She's like, you know, he's like, Marion left me after our son died. You know, she couldn't get over the grief. And when she comes back, she's like, well, are you ready to join the world again? And it's like,
no, she goes, are you back?
Are you back?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like implying he was the one.
But if they're both out of it because it's I like if he's too depressed to like have like a normal relationship, and now like he's got his spark back, and maybe she just can't deal with it. I don't know.
Maybe.
One other little tiny thing that bothered me is there's a picture of Marion on the refrigerator, and it is a shot from I almost said Return of the Jedi from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where she's got her white blouse with the little red stitching on it, which I saw at the Lucasfilm archives, and it choked me up because I wasn't expecting to see it. And I was like, oh my god, it's Marion's outfit. But how do they have that picture? They weren't snapping photos while they did Raiders of the Lost Ark, like while the action's all going on. It seems like you take that picture of her face and Photoshop in some different shirt.
Maybe that's the only shirt she owned. Maybe that's her. Maybe she had a closet full of those shirts.
Yeah, she had 10 of them because it was trash at the end of Raiders. Marion, whatever you do, keep your eyes shut.
Anyway, so that ending, I felt like it could have been a little more fun. Like I felt like the ending could have been a little more fun. Like maybe
they could have brought Data back also.
Yeah.
Short Round, you're here too.
Yeah, they should have had like Goonies in there, and it did feel a little Goonies.
There's the part where they go into the cave. There's a part that felt like Goonies going into the caverns. Like the look of it and everything.
So if you like James Bond, Goonies, I love this.
But honestly though, James Mangold did a really, really good job directing this. I feel like the pacing was very, very good. I had the only scene that was slightly long was that chase scene. And it was the tuk-tuk chase with the... It was a little too long.
Yeah.
But it was still entertaining. The editing was really good. Everything that was happening was playing out well. And even though it was slightly long, it was well done. I wasn't like, okay, what's gonna happen here?
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah.
So overall, minus my little handful of complaints, I really liked it. I really liked it. All these people that are hating on it, I just don't understand. I don't understand it.
What would have been a better way to send Indy off? I mean, again, like I think that maybe if Marion and Indy had met in a more exotic location or something, like that sad apartment, I think it should have been ditched.
They should have. Maybe he has maybe he has a real house somewhere and he wakes up at his real house. Welcome home, Mindy.
A
Are
tree
you
house.
tired of that terrible apartment in the city? Welcome to your house in the countryside. We're beautiful. Something
cool.
different.
And I'm not hating on New York. I understand New York apartments are expensive, but his was also very messy.
Yeah.
On top of,
Yeah.
it was just kind of it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. But, yeah, overall, really good. Fun time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're coming up. We're getting close to an hour here. Rambling forever. So, I think we should wrap it, yeah?
Yeah, let's wrap it.
So, if you're still here, thanks so much for watching. If you made it to the end, what should they write in the comments if they made it to the end?
What do you mean? Oh, like a secret word?
Sure.
They should write.
What is this?
Antikythera. Do you know how to spell it? It's not spelled the way it sounds.
Yeah, so just phonetically, whatever. If you write Antikythera in the comments, we'll know you made it to the end. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'm gonna throw this bottle away, and then, thanks for helping me out, Natalie.
You're welcome.
All right. So, all right, kids, have fun. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye.